Section 1. The Restless Mind. A novice struggles with anxious thoughts that ripple like wind across water. Tonight, we are going to explore some timeless Zen stories that have helped people find peace and relaxation for centuries. The room you are in might already feel softer now. The faint hum of the night, the quiet sigh of air moving past curtains, or the steady glow of a lamp in the corner. Perhaps your body is still carrying the pace of the day, yet here, in this gentle space, the rhythm begins to slow. Remember, inner peace is not far away. It is already here, waiting to be noticed in the simple rise and fall of your breath. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you would like, share your location and the local time in the comments so others listening can feel this circle of quiet connection stretching across the world. Now, let us ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins with a novice monk who had just arrived at a mountain temple. The boy was young, perhaps no older than 16, and his mind was restless. As he lay on his straw mat in the shared dormitory, thoughts tumbled through him like dry leaves caught in a swirling wind. He thought of his family far away, of the chores waiting tomorrow, of mistakes he feared making, of questions without answers. He wondered if he had chosen the right path, if he was worthy of the robe he now wore. Each thought collided with the next, a storm without end. This restlessness is familiar to many, even centuries later. Anxiety, like an uninvited guest, often arrives at night. It paces the mind's halls, opening doors we wish to keep shut, replaying memories or inventing worries that have not yet come to pass. In Buddhist teaching, this is the nature of the restless mind, what the Buddha once called the monkey mind, always leaping from branch to branch, never settling. The novice longed for rest, yet the more he chased it, the farther it fled. His teacher, an elder monk with silver hair and calm eyes, noticed the boy's agitation. Instead of offering a lecture, he simply invited the novice to walk with him under the moon. Together they crossed the courtyard where dew glistened on the grass and a cool breeze rustled the bamboo grove. The elder said nothing at first. They walked slowly, each step measured, each breath aligned with the pace of their feet. Finally, the master spoke. "Your mind is like the wind tonight. It stirs, it rushes, it unsettles the leaves. But notice beneath the wind, the earth does not move. Beneath your anxious thoughts, stillness remains." This was the teaching of impermanence in a gentle form. Just as wind rises and fades, thoughts too come and go. They are not the ground of being, they are the weather above it. A Zen master might ask, when clouds race across the sky, is the sky itself disturbed? The boy tried to listen. He noticed the sound of his sandals against the stone path, the whisper of bamboo, the rhythm of his own breath. For a moment, the storm of his mind eased, replaced by the simple act of walking. The master smiled. You see, peace is not found by chasing away the wind. It is found by remembering the earth beneath your feet. Tonight, you can try the same. As you lie here, feel the weight of your body pressing gently into the bed, as though you are the earth itself. Bring your attention to 3 slow breaths. Inhale through your nose, noticing the coolness. Exhale softly, letting your body sink deeper. With each exhale, imagine your worries fluttering away like leaves, while beneath them, the ground of stillness holds you steady. The quirky side of Zen often plays with paradox. Some monks told a playful koan, Two monks hear the wind in the bamboo. One says the bamboo is moving, the other says the wind is moving. A master overhears and says, "Neither the bamboo nor the wind moves. It is your mind that moves." For the novice lying awake, this story became a comfort. His anxious thoughts were not proof of failure. They were simply movements of mind, passing like gusts of air. And so, step by step, the restless boy began to learn that anxiety did not need to be battled or silenced. It only needed to be seen, recognized, and allowed to pass. His journey toward stillness had begun not through grand effort, but through small, mindful noticing. The courtyard that night shimmered under moonlight, and the sound of crickets rose and fell. The elder guided the boy back to his mat, whispering, "The way out is in. Remember the still earth beneath the wind." The boy lay down again, this time with a softer breath. Outside, the wind still moved the bamboo, but inside, a new seed of calm had taken root. Section 2. The Mirror of Stillness. A parable reveals how quiet reflection turns turmoil into calm clarity. The novice awoke the next evening with the same restlessness stirring in his chest. The lesson of the night before lingered faintly, like the echo of a bell still trembling in the air, but his thoughts soon returned to their wild racing. He feared that peace would never last, that stillness was beyond his reach. When the elder master noticed, he guided the boy once again, not to the courtyard this time, but to the meditation hall. There, a great polished mirror stood against the wall, a relic from a distant dynasty. The master pointed to it and said, "When your mind is restless, sit before this mirror. Watch how the stillness reflects even the most frantic movement." The novice sat cross-legged before the mirror, gazing into its surface. At first, all he could see was his own worried face, his furrowed brow, his eyes darting with nervousness. Yet, as the minutes passed, he began to notice something deeper. The mirror never resisted him, never judged the anxious expression it reflected. Whether he smiled or frowned, whether his body shifted or remained still, the mirror simply showed what was there, clear and unwavering. This was the teaching of non-clinging, one of the Buddha's central insights. Just as the mirror holds no attachment to the images it reflects, so too can the mind observe its own thoughts without being pulled into them. An anxious idea may appear, linger, and vanish, just like a cloud passing across the glass. The mirror is not changed by the cloud. Your awareness is not harmed by the thought. A Zen master might ask, is it the face that worries or the mirror that worries? The boy's breathing slowed as he continued to look. He realized that his thoughts were like waves rippling across a pond, disturbing the surface but never touching the depth below. For a moment, he felt that depth inside himself. It was not loud or dramatic, but quiet, like the steady reflection of moonlight on still water. The master placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and whispered, "Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the mirror that sees clearly." Tonight, you can join in this reflection. Imagine yourself lying quietly, your mind like a polished mirror. Allow any thought to appear, worry about tomorrow, regret from today, even a fleeting distraction. Do not push it away. Instead, see it as a reflection gliding across a mirror. Inhale, acknowledge it. Exhale, let it fade. Try this with 3 slow breaths. Notice how your awareness remains clear, untouched, even as thoughts pass by. This is your micro-practice, to become the mirror rather than the reflection. The quirky side of Zen often revealed itself in the use of mirrors. One monk once said, "The mirror never forgets to reflect." "Do you forget to breathe?" Another, more playful, placed a small candle before the mirror and declared, "The flame has two bodies now, one that burns, one that shines." Which one is real? His students laughed. But the lesson remained. All appearances are fleeting, yet awareness holds them gently. The novice began to practice this lesson daily. Each time anxiety stirred, he would sit before the mirror and breathe. At first, the thoughts came loudly, accusing him of failure, but as he watched, he began to notice their impermanence. A thought would rise like a gust of wind, then dissolve before he had time to grasp it. This softened his fear. He realized that anxiety was not a permanent storm, but a series of passing clouds. One evening, as he sat before the mirror, the master asked, "If the mirror cracks, does the reflection end?" The boy thought for a long time. Then he replied, "The reflection changes, but the light remains." The master smiled, for this was the beginning of wisdom. In modern times, the mirror's lesson still holds. When your mind feels crowded with anxious thoughts, you may sit quietly and remember, you are not the thoughts. You are the mirror that sees them. You do not need to polish the mirror endlessly. You only need to remember that its clarity is always there, beneath the dust. As the night deepened, the novice left the meditation hall with a calmer step. The mirror remained silent and steady, waiting for the next anxious soul to sit before it. And though the boy still carried worries, he now carried also the reflection of stillness, a memory of the calm surface beneath the ripples. Outside, the bamboo swayed gently, but the boy felt less disturbed. The wind would blow, the thoughts would come, but the mirror within him had begun to shine. Section 3. The Empty Boat. A story teaches letting go of imagined threats that never truly collide. The following night, clouds drifted thick across the valley, muffling the moonlight and wrapping the temple in a dim gray hush. The novices had finished their evening chants, and the courtyard settled into a stillness broken only by the croak of frogs and the soft tapping of branches against the eaves. Yet in the novice's heart, restlessness stirred once again. The mirror had helped, yes, but when he returned to his bed, old anxieties crept back in the thought of failing his master, of disappointing his family, of being too fragile for the path. The elder monk, sensing the boy's unease, motioned for him to follow. They walked beyond the temple gates and down a narrow stone path toward the river. There, a small wooden boat bobbed lightly against its tether. The master untied it and stepped aboard, inviting the novice to join him. Together they drifted into the current, the lantern at the bow casting faint ripples of light across the dark water. For a time, neither spoke. Then the master asked, "Do you see that boat across the river?" The novice nodded. A lone craft floated slowly toward them, carried by the current. His body tensed. "What if it strikes us?" he whispered. But as the boat drew closer, they saw it was empty. No oarsman, no passenger, only an abandoned vessel drifting with the flow. The boats touched gently, wood knocking against wood, then drifted apart without harm. The master smiled. This is the parable of the empty boat. When we imagine someone steering, we feel anger or fear, but when we see it as empty, there is nothing to fight, nothing to fear. Anxiety is often like that empty, drifting thoughts that we mistake for threats. This was the teaching of non-self and non-reaction. So many of our fears are born not from reality, but from stories we create around it. A Zen master might ask, when the boat drifts empty, who is it that collides with you? The novice pondered this deeply, realizing that many of his anxious thoughts were like the empty boat, hollow, harmless, passing. The quirky wisdom of Zen often returned to this image. Some monks would deliberately push small empty boats into the river at night, laughing as they bumped against one another. To outsiders, it seemed foolish, but to the monks, it was a playful reminder that not everything that strikes us intends harm. Much of life is simply drifting, touching, moving on. The novice leaned back against the side of the boat, feeling his breath slow. The rocking of the current soothed him, and he imagined his anxious thoughts as little boats of their own, drifting past on the river. Some came close, some bumped against him, but none stayed. One by one, they floated away into the dark. Tonight, you can try this as well. Imagine yourself resting upon a gentle river, your body like a boat cradled by water. With each inhale, picture the current carrying you forward. With each exhale, imagine setting one anxious thought adrift in a small, empty boat. Watch it drift away. Try this with 3 or 4 breaths, noticing how each release leaves more space within you. This is your micro-practice, letting thoughts float downstream without clinging. The master guided the novice back to shore, and as they stepped onto the bank, the boy whispered, "So much of my fear is only an empty boat." The master nodded, his eyes glimmering in the lantern light. "Then remember this, when the boat is empty, there is no need to shout." The temple bell chimed faintly in the distance, struck by the night breeze, and the boy carried the sound back to his chamber. He still felt the stirrings of worry, but now he could see them more clearly. Like boats without oarsmen, they came and went, drifting into the wide river of mind. Above, the clouds parted briefly, allowing the moon to shine through. The light shimmered across the river, catching on the ripples where the 2 boats had touched. The novice paused, gazing at the reflection, and for the first time in many nights, he felt a soft smile rise to his lips. Section 4. The Bamboo Whisper. Night breezes through bamboo show the lesson of yielding instead of resisting. The boy awoke before dawn, though sleep had only brushed against him like a fleeting breeze. His restlessness had eased a little after the lesson of the empty boat. Yet when silence returned, new anxieties found their way back into his chest. Would the day's tasks overwhelm him? Would he stumble in chanting? Would the other novices laugh at his clumsy hands? Anxiety, he realized, was a master that never tired of speaking. The elder monk sensed this heaviness, and once more beckoned him into the cool air of morning. Together they walked along the temple's outer wall until they reached the grove of bamboo. The stalks rose tall and straight, their green leaves trembling in the first breath of wind. The sound was delicate, yet endless, an orchestra of whispers, each stalk bending and swaying. The master stood still and closed his eyes. "Listen," he said, "the bamboo speaks." The boy tilted his head, hearing the rustle, the creak, the sigh of leaves brushing against one another. "Do you notice?" the master asked. "The bamboo does not resist the wind. It bends, it yields, and in yielding, it survives. If it fought to remain rigid, it would break. So it is with the anxious heart. You cannot stop the wind, but you can learn to sway. This was the teaching of non-resistance, one of the gentle currents of the middle way. Anxiety often grows from our refusal to allow feelings to pass, our attempt to stiffen against what is. But like bamboo, we are meant to bend, to yield, and to rise again. A Zen master might ask, when the bamboo sways, is it weaker than the oak, or stronger in its yielding? The boy sat beneath the grove, letting the wind move across his skin, letting the sound of whispering leaves surround him. He imagined his anxious thoughts as gusts of wind. At first he tried to brace against them, clenching his shoulders, holding his breath. But then he released, let his body soften, let his breath move naturally. He felt himself sway, not in body but in spirit, and the thoughts passed through him without shattering his peace. For you lying quietly tonight, this lesson can become a practice. With your next breath, imagine yourself as bamboo in the wind. As you inhale, feel your spine lengthen gently, tall and steady. As you exhale, allow your body to soften, like bamboo bending, gracefully. Repeat this with 3 breaths, noticing how yielding releases tension more easily than resistance. This is your micro-practice, strength through softness, resilience through yielding. The quirky nature of Zen was often found in the bamboo grove. Some monks would take turns standing perfectly still as the stalks bent around them, declaring, "We are the only stiff stalks here." Others laughed, bowing to the wind, saying, "The breeze is our true teacher tonight." Their play reminded everyone that wisdom could be light-hearted, that anxiety could be softened by humor, as well as practice. The boy began to see his anxiety differently. It was not an enemy storm to be driven away, but a wind to sway with. He realized that each anxious thought carried energy, and if he let it pass through rather than fight it, the energy could dissolve. He remembered the bamboo whispering above him and thought, "Perhaps I too can survive by yielding." Later that evening, as the temple settled into night once more, the boy returned to the grove alone. He sat in stillness, watching the moon rise behind the stalks. The bamboo swayed again, its leaves shimmering like silver threads. The boy breathed deeply, and this time, when anxiety stirred, he whispered, "Bend, do not break." And his breath softened, his shoulders eased, and the whisper of bamboo became his companion. The master, watching from a distance, smiled. He knew the boy had begun to carry the grove within him. Just as the bell echoed silently through the valley, the bamboo's yielding strength now echoed quietly in the novice's heart. And so the night carried on, with the sound of wind through leaves, a lullaby for those learning to turn anxiety into stillness. Section 5. The Parable of the Teacup. Anxiety overflows like a brimming cup until emptied with mindful awareness. The following night, the air was heavy, with the scent of tea leaves drying in baskets stacked near the kitchen hall. A gentle steam drifted upward from a pot left warming on the coals, and the novice, still wrestling with his thoughts, found himself drawn toward the soft fragrance. The elder monk beckoned him to sit, placing before him a small porcelain cup. The master poured slowly, the amber liquid rising until it almost brimmed. The novice stared nervously, afraid it might spill. The master paused, letting the silence hang, then deliberately added one more drop. The tea spilled over, trickling down the side of the cup onto the wooden tray. "This," the master said softly, "is the mind when it clings to too much." Your anxieties are like this tea, pouring and pouring until there is no space left. Tell me, if the cup is already full, what more can it hold? The novice lowered his eyes. He realized his mind was exactly like the overflowing cup crowded with worries, each thought spilling into the next, leaving no room for stillness. The elder continued, "If you wish to drink deeply, you must first empty your cup. Anxiety cannot be calmed by adding more thoughts, more fear, more judgment. It eases only when you create space." This was the teaching of letting go, an aspect of non-attachment. Just as one must empty the teacup to enjoy its contents, so too must the mind release its grip on endless worries to taste peace. A Zen master might ask, if you never empty your cup, do you drink tea, or only the overflow of your own grasping? The boy watched as the master lifted the cup to his lips and sipped calmly, savoring the warmth. The steam curled upward, carrying with it the fragrance of roasted leaves. Notice, the elder whispered, the tea does not rush. It cools, it waits, it offers itself fully in its own time. So too can you allow your thoughts to settle. Anxiety is nothing more than tea poured too quickly. The novice closed his eyes and inhaled the steam. For a moment, his racing thoughts slowed, soothed by the aroma. He realized that his anxiety was not something to banish. It was something to acknowledge, then release, like letting a cup be emptied. Tonight, you can practice the same. As you rest, imagine your mind as a teacup. With each inhale, picture it filling with the day's thoughts, tasks, memories, small worries. With each exhale, imagine gently pouring some of it out, emptying space inside. Do this for 3 slow breaths, and notice the relief of lightness, the spaciousness that remains. This is your micro-practice, emptying the cup, 1 exhale at a time. The quirky side of Zen often turned tea into teaching. One story tells of a master who poured tea for a scholar until the cup overflowed and spilled onto the scholar's robe. The scholar protested, and the master laughed gently. Like this cup, your mind is too full for wisdom to enter. Though centuries old, the tale still resonates, reminding us that anxiety often springs from being overfilled, from never pausing to make space. The boy began to treat tea differently after that night. Each time he drank, he imagined pouring out his worries with the steam. He learned to sip slowly, noticing the warmth on his tongue, the way the cup rested in his hand, the rising curl of fragrance. In those moments, the clamor of anxious thoughts faded into the background, replaced by simple presence. One evening, as the monks gathered for tea, after chanting, the novice found himself smiling. The other novices, surprised, asked why. He lifted his cup and said quietly, "I have learned not only to drink tea, but to let it teach me." The elder overheard and gave a knowing nod. The temple grew quiet as night deepened, but within the novice's heart a space had opened. His mind was still prone to overfilling, but now he knew the practice of emptying, of pouring out gently until balance returned. The teacup on the tray gleamed in the lamplight, half full, half empty, perfectly poised. And so too was the boy, learning that the way to peace was not to fight the overflow, but to create space within. Section 6. Walking the wooden bridge. Each mindful step across a bridge shows how to cross from fear to ease. The novice had begun to understand the lesson of the teacup, yet the anxious currents in his chest had not vanished entirely. The following day, After a long round of sweeping the temple halls and carrying water from the well, his mind once more fell into a restless rhythm. He worried about stumbling during morning recitation, about misplacing tools, about the countless small mistakes that seemed to multiply whenever he thought too much about them. The elder monk noticed the boy's furrowed brow and suggested a different kind of practice that evening. They walked together toward the wooden bridge that spanned the narrow river at the base of the hill. Lanterns hung at either end, their flames glowing faintly in the mist. The master placed his hand on the rail and whispered, "Tonight we cross not to reach the other side, but to feel every step." The novice followed, uncertain, his sandals creaking against the planks. The master moved slowly, deliberately. Each foot lifted with the inhale, each step placed with the exhale. The bridge groaned softly, its timbers echoing beneath them like a drum. "This bridge," the master said, "is like your life. One step carries you forward. If you try to rush across, you miss the music beneath your feet." The teaching of mindfulness in walking emerged here, a core practice of Zen and Buddhism alike. Anxiety often pulls the mind into the future, projecting endless what-ifs, while mindfulness roots us in the only moment we truly touch, this step, this breath. A Zen master might ask, "Do you walk to arrive, or do you arrive with each step?" The novice tried to match his breath with his steps. At first his thoughts darted ahead, worrying about reaching the far side of the bridge. But as he listened to the creak of wood, the faint splash of river water, and the whisper of wind through the railings, he found himself sinking into the rhythm. Inhale, lift. Exhale, place. The noise of his mind quieted, not through force, but through presence. The quirky side of Zen often appeared on this bridge. Some monks enjoyed walking backward, laughing as they tested their balance. Others paused halfway to lean over the edge, watching the moon shimmer on the ripples below, declaring, "The bridge carries me, even when I do not walk." Their playfulness reminded everyone that practice could be light, that mindfulness did not need to be rigid. Tonight you can join them in imagination. Even while lying still, you can walk the wooden bridge in your mind. With each inhale, picture yourself lifting a foot, feeling its weight. Leave the plank. With each exhale, imagine placing it down with gentle certainty. Count 10 such breaths, 10 such steps. Notice how even without moving, you are carried forward into calm. This is your micro-practice, walking without hurry, arriving in every step of the breath. Halfway across the bridge, the master stopped and pointed to the lantern at the far end. Anxiety is like staring at that lantern, rushing toward it, fearing you will stumble before you arrive. But peace is found here. With your foot on this very plank, the lantern will still be there when you are ready. The boy nodded slowly, realizing that his fears were lanterns at the far end, visible, but not here yet. He could walk toward them steadily, without rushing. For the first time in days, his chest felt lighter. When they reached the far side of the bridge, the master paused again. "You have crossed," he said, "but notice you are already home with each step." The boy looked back at the bridge, its lanterns glowing, and felt a quiet warmth spread within him. In modern life, bridges take many forms: tasks to finish, conversations to face, decisions waiting on the horizon. Anxiety urges us to sprint, to stumble in haste. But the lesson of the wooden bridge remains: breathe, step, arrive. The way out is in That night, as the novice returned to his mat, he replayed the rhythm of walking in his mind. His body still carried the memory of inhale, lift, exhale, place. He drifted into sleep more easily, as though the bridge itself had carried him into rest. And in the darkness, the faint sound of the river beneath the bridge seemed to echo like a lullaby, guiding him deeper into stillness. Section 7. The Hungry Ghost of Worry. A compassionate metaphor for restless craving soothed through gentle acknowledgement. The night after crossing the wooden bridge, the novice returned to his chamber with a calmer heart, yet he soon discovered that anxiety is a creature of many disguises. As he lay on his mat, he felt his stomach tighten. Thoughts circled once more. What if tomorrow I forget my verses? What if the master loses faith in me? What if the other novices whisper that I do not belong? These worries came like ghosts, hovering just beyond reach, never satisfied with answers. When dawn rose, he confessed this unease to the elder monk. The master listened without interruption, then guided him toward the temple gate. "Tonight," the master said, "you will meet your hungry ghost." The novice shivered at the phrase, for he had heard stories of hungry ghosts, beings with tiny throats and vast bellies, cursed to wander endlessly in search of satisfaction, never finding enough. They were frightening images, yet the elder's eyes were calm, even kind. "Do not fear," the master explained. "Your anxious thoughts are such ghosts. They beg and beg, but their hunger is endless. If you try to feed them with answers, they only grow larger. Instead, you must see them clearly and greet them with compassion." They stood quietly at the gate. The wind stirred, and the novice closed his eyes. In the stillness, he imagined shapes, forming just beyond the threshold, long-limbed shadows, whispering voices, the restless presence of beings that demanded attention. His body tensed, but the master spoke softly. "Bow to them. Do not run. Say, 'Hello, dear ghost. I see you.'" With trembling voice, the novice whispered those words. To his surprise, the shadows seemed to soften. The whispers quieted. He realized that the ghosts were not enemies to be banished, but metaphors for his own restless fears. Each time he acknowledged them gently, their power lessened. This was the teaching of compassion directed inward. Just as we offer kindness to others who suffer, we can also extend it to our own troubled feelings. A Zen master might ask, when the ghost hungers, is it the ghost who suffers, or the one who denies it compassion? The quirky side of Zen often appeared in how monks treated such fears. One elder once left bowls of rice by the temple gate, announcing, "I am feeding my ghosts." The younger monks laughed, but they noticed how his own worries seemed lighter afterward. Another monk drew silly faces on paper lanterns and said, "These are my ghosts, and tonight I will let them smile." What seemed absurd was actually profound. By treating fears with humor and kindness, they lost their sharp edge. Tonight, you can practice this with your own ghosts of worry. As you lie here, notice if any anxious thought lingers. Instead of pushing it away, place your hand gently on your heart and whisper silently, "Hello, dear ghost. I know you are here. May you rest." Breathe 3 slow breaths with your hand resting there, each exhale like a soothing lullaby for the ghost within. This is your micro-practice, greeting your worry with compassion instead of resistance. The novice felt something shift within him. By bowing to his hungry ghosts rather than fleeing them, he discovered they were not so frightening after all. They were only parts of himself, asking for recognition. When he returned to his chamber, his chest felt lighter, his breath deeper. The ghosts had not vanished completely, but their grip had loosened. Later that evening, he shared with the other novices what he had learned. One laughed and said, "So you spoke to ghosts?" The boy smiled faintly. "I did," and they answered by quieting down. The others fell silent, realizing that perhaps they too carried restless shadows. In modern life, hungry ghosts appear in many forms. The endless craving for approval, the scrolling through messages late at night, the fear of missing out, the gnawing doubt of not being enough. Yet, like the novice, we can pause, acknowledge these ghosts, and offer them compassion. The way out is in. That night, as the wind rattled the temple gate, the novice lay more peacefully on his mat. He imagined the ghosts sitting quietly outside, no longer demanding, but resting in the kindness he had shown them. For the first time, he felt he could rest alongside them without fear. And in that stillness, the gate stood as a silent reminder. Even restless ghosts are soothed when greeted with the light of compassion. Section 8. The Forest Monk's Vigil. A tale of sitting through long nights until anxiety softens into presence. The night after meeting his hungry ghosts, the novice sat awake on his mat, reflecting on what had shifted inside him. For the first time, his anxiety no longer felt like a storm determined to drown him. It was more like a restless visitor knocking at the gate, and he had learned he could greet it with compassion rather than fear. Still, questions lingered in his mind. Could this calmness truly last? Would anxiety not return even stronger? The elder monk, sensing the boy's inner stirring, invited him to join in a different practice. "Tonight," the master said, "you will sit as the forest monk once did." He led the boy beyond the temple grounds, down a narrow trail that wound through the bamboo and into the woods where the canopy blocked the moon. The forest floor was soft with moss, the air cool with the scent of pine and earth. Crickets sang in the distance, and an owl called, its voice deep and steady. The master pointed to a large flat stone. "Sit here," he instructed, "and keep vigil with the night. Do not fight your thoughts. Let them rise and pass as clouds drift across the sky." The boy obeyed, though unease fluttered in his chest. He sat cross-legged, back straight, hands folded. At first, the forest seemed overwhelming. Every creak of branches, every rustle in the underbrush heightened his tension. His mind leapt from fear to fear. What if an animal approaches? What if I cannot sit still? What if I fail again? His heartbeat quickened, his breath shallow. But as the minutes stretched, something began to shift. He noticed how the forest held both sound and silence together. The owl's call did not disturb the stillness. It became part of it. The rustle of leaves was not an interruption, but a verse in the night's song. Slowly, his breath deepened. He realized his thoughts, too, could be part of this vastness arising, fading, blending into the quiet expanse around him. This was the teaching of mindfulness in its rawest form, to sit with what is, without clinging, without rejecting. Anxiety is not an enemy to be crushed, nor a master to obey. It is simply another sound in the forest, another ripple in the pond of awareness. A Zen master might ask, when the forest sings, do you choose which notes belong, or do you let the song be whole? The boy stayed on the stone, learning to watch his thoughts come and go. At times, worry swelled again. Visions of failing, of stumbling, but instead of tightening, he whispered silently, "Passing cloud." And just as clouds drifted across the hidden moon, the thought drifted, leaving behind space. Tonight, you too can join the forest vigil in imagination. Lie still, and with each breath, picture yourself seated beneath tall pines. Inhale the cool air, exhale into the vastness. When an anxious thought arises, label it gently, "Passing cloud." Breathe again. With 3 breaths, let those clouds drift, leaving the wide sky of your awareness clear. This is your micro practice, naming and releasing, sitting with the whole forest of your mind. The quirky humor of Zen often flavored such vigils. One monk once claimed he saw demons dancing in the dark during his night watch. When asked how he responded, he said, "I offered them tea, but they vanished before I could pour." The others laughed, but the lesson was plain. Fear often dissolves when faced with kindness instead of resistance. Hours passed, and the novice remained on the stone, the forest slowly becoming less a place of fear and more a place of belonging. The anxiety within him began to blend with the chorus of night, until it no longer dominated. He realized that stillness was not the absence of movement, but the embrace of all movements within a larger calm. When dawn's first light touched the treetops, the master returned. He found the boy sitting more at ease, eyes half closed, face serene. "You have kept vigil," the elder said. "What have you learned?" the boy replied softly. "My fears are sounds in the forest. When I stop clinging, they become part of the song." The master nodded with quiet pride. In modern life, the forest vigil can be recreated in your own room. Instead of fearing the creak of pipes or the hum of traffic, you can allow them into your meditation, part of the greater symphony. Your thoughts, too, are notes in that song, arising and fading. That night, back in his chamber, the novice lay on his mat with a steadier breath. The forest remained within him, vast and alive. The restless ghosts had softened, and the storm of worry now felt like a river flowing quietly through the woods. Sleep came more gently, carrying him into dreams where the forest and his heart were one. Section 9. The river's current. Observing flowing water illustrates non-clinging and the natural release of anxious thoughts. The forest vigil had left the novice calmer than before, yet as the days passed he found that anxiety often returned in waves, like the tide lapping against the shore. One evening, after chanting and sweeping were done, he walked with the elder monk down to the river that wound its way through the valley. The water gleamed under the moon, moving steadily toward places unseen. The boy watched as sticks and leaves drifted by, caught in the current. Some swirled in small eddies before continuing on, while others floated smoothly until vanishing around the bend. The elder spoke softly, "This river is your mind. The current is always flowing, carrying thoughts as the water carries leaves. When you cling to one, you suffer, for it was never meant to stay. When you let it pass, peace returns." The novice crouched at the bank and reached for a twig, but it slipped from his grasp, swept away before he could hold it. He felt a pang of recognition. His anxieties were like that twig. He tried to hold them, to examine and control them, yet they always slipped away, leaving him tired. "If I let them all go," he asked, "will anything remain?" The master smiled. "Yes, what remains is the river itself, vast and steady. That river is your awareness, which cannot be swept away. This was the teaching of non-clinging, central to the Buddha's path. To hold tightly to what is impermanent is to invite suffering, but to release, to let the current move freely, is to find ease. A Zen master might ask, when you release the twig, do you lose it, or do you gain the river? The novice sat quietly, listening to the flow. He noticed how the sound of rushing water did not demand anything of him. It simply moved, steady and constant. His own breath began to mirror that rhythm, inhale, exhale, like the river's rise and fall. He felt his body soften, his chest loosen. For a moment, he no longer feared the coming and going of thoughts. Tonight, you can imagine yourself by that river. As you inhale, picture the water swelling gently. As you exhale, imagine dropping a single worry into the current, watching it drift away. Try this with 3 or 4 breaths. Each exhale, another twig of thought released. This is your micro-practice, letting the river carry your anxiety, trusting it will find its way downstream. The quirky side of Zen often emerged at the riverbank. Some monks would float paper boats with lanterns, laughing as they watched the tiny lights drift into the night. "There go our worries," they would say, waving them farewell. Others would step into the shallow water barefoot, declaring that the river massaged their thoughts away. Such play reminded them that letting go did not need to be heavy. It could be light, even joyful. The novice, too, began to find ease in letting go. He remembered how often he had clung to anxious stories. What if he failed? What if tomorrow was too much? What if the others judged him? Now he began to see each story as a twig on the river, a boat passing through, not meant to stay. He whispered softly to himself, "The way out is in. The way to stillness is to release." As he sat by the bank, the moon rose higher, casting a silver path across the moving water. The novice imagined his worries drifting along that path, carried toward the sea. He no longer needed to chase them, nor to fear them. He simply allowed them to move. The elder watched quietly, seeing the boy's breath steady, his shoulders relax. "Good," he said finally. "You are learning that the current of mind cannot be stopped, but you can choose whether to cling to the twigs or to rest in the river itself." In modern life, the river still speaks. Emails, messages, and news rush past like endless currents. Anxiety grows when we try to hold every piece, to never let anything drift by. Yet the teaching of the river invites us to release, to trust that we do not need to carry every twig. Awareness is the river, wide enough for all, steady enough to hold everything that passes. That night, as the novice returned to his mat, he felt the river flowing within him. He closed his eyes, listened to his breath as though it were water, and drifted into rest. The current carried him gently toward sleep, and in dreams he floated without clinging, free in the vastness of the stream. Section 10. The Stone Garden. Raked patterns in sand reveal harmony, even in the midst of restless movement. The novice's nights were lighter now, his breath slower, his shoulders looser. Yet one unease remained, the patterns of anxiety that seemed to draw themselves again and again across his mind, even after practice. It was as if some hidden hand raked restless lines through his chest, leaving grooves of worry that would not vanish. Seeing this, the elder monk brought him to the stone garden at the heart of the monastery. The garden was a simple square of white sand, bordered by low wooden walls. Stones of varying sizes stood like islands scattered across its surface. The novices took turns raking the sand each morning, drawing long, parallel lines that flowed around the stones in curving waves. Tonight, the garden shimmered beneath moonlight, the sand glowing softly, the stones casting long shadows. The master handed the boy a rake and said, "Here, anxiety becomes art." The novice hesitated, then drew the rake slowly through the sand. At first his lines wavered, broken by his shaking hands. He frowned, anxious about his own anxiety. The master placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Look closely," he whispered. "Do you see how the patterns are never permanent? Tomorrow the rain may fall, the wind may scatter leaves, and the sand will be raked anew. Your anxious thoughts are the same temporary designs drawn and erased, drawn and erased." This was the teaching of impermanence, revealed in the quiet ripples of sand. Each thought leaves a mark, but no mark is final. A Zen master might ask, when the rake lifts, does the pattern remain in the sand, or only in your memory? The novice raked again, slower this time, breathing with each pull. The lines grew more even, flowing around the stones like water around islands. He noticed how the stones, once seeming obstacles, now became centers of beauty. Anxiety, he realized, could be the same. What once seemed blockages could shape the flow of his mind, if he allowed them to. Tonight, you too can imagine raking your own stone garden. As you inhale, picture lifting the rake. As you exhale, imagine drawing a smooth line through the sand of your mind. When a worry appears, see it as a stone. Instead of resisting, simply let your breath flow around it, carving harmony into the scene. Try this for 3 or 4 breaths. This is your micro-practice, shaping anxiety into patterns of calm rather than chaos. The quirky spirit of Zen often showed itself in this garden. Some monks would rake playful spirals. Others would arrange the stones into curious shapes. One monk even drew the character for heart in the sand, only to erase it moments later laughing. So fleeting is the mind. Their joy reminded the novices that impermanence need not be feared, it could be celebrated. As the boy continued raking, he felt his body ease. The sound of sand shifting under the wooden teeth soothed him, steady and repetitive. His breath matched the rhythm, long and smooth. For the first time, he did not fight the patterns of his mind. He simply shaped them, knowing they would pass. His chest felt less like a storm and more like a garden ever-changing, yet always capable of beauty. The master nodded in approval. Anxiety carves lines through you, yes, but you need not see them as scars. They can be patterns, reshaped each day. When you understand impermanence, even restlessness becomes part of harmony. In modern times, the stone garden still speaks. Each day brings new patterns of stress notifications, deadlines, expectations, yet none remain forever. To remember this is to hold lightly, to know that even restless lines in the sand are washed clean by wind and time. The novice left the garden that night with a calmer heart. He lay on his mat, imagining the sand, the stones, the gentle rake. His breath became the rake, smoothing lines through his mind. His worries became stones, shaping rather than obstructing. And slowly, as the moon crossed the sky, he drifted into sleep, resting in the impermanent patterns of his inner garden. Section 11. The Lantern in Fog. A teaching shows how even dim light guides one through uncertainty. Mist rolled into the valley the next evening, blanketing the monastery in a quiet veil. The lanterns at the edge of the paths glowed like faint stars, their light softened by the fog. The novice followed the elder into this shifting haze, where the outlines of buildings blurred, and the world felt both near and far. The master carried a single lantern in his hand, its small flame casting a circle of gold that barely reached beyond a few paces. They walked slowly, each step swallowed quickly by the mist. The novice felt unease rise within him again. He could not see where the path led, could not tell if a bend or a drop lay ahead. "How do we know we are safe?" he whispered. The master lifted the lantern. "This is how anxiety works. You long to see the entire path, but life offers you only this one circle of light, one step at a time." The boy stared into the mist, realizing that the little flame was enough. With each step, the fog ahead parted just enough to reveal the next stone, the next curve. He did not need to see the entire journey. He only needed to trust the lantern. This was the teaching of trust in the present moment, a cousin to mindfulness. Anxiety rushes us into the fog, demanding to know every outcome. But peace is found in returning to the small circle of light we already carry. A Zen master might ask, is the lantern lighting the fog, or is the fog teaching you to trust the lantern? The novice breathed deeply and tried to match his steps to the flame's glow. He noticed how the mist seemed less threatening when he focused on the warmth in his hand. His fears softened into a quiet rhythm. Step, breathe, light. Tonight you can imagine walking the lantern path yourself. Picture a gentle fog surrounding you, softening the world. In your hand, a lantern glows, showing just enough for one step. With each inhale, imagine lifting your foot. With each exhale, place it gently into the circle of light. Repeat this for 10 breaths. This is your micro-practice, trusting that one step is enough, that light expands only as you move forward. The quirky side of Zen often turned fog into playful teaching. One monk, caught in a dense mist, pretended to bump into invisible walls, laughing that he had discovered the house of clouds. Another placed his lantern on the ground and declared, "Even the fog bows when I put the light low." Their laughter echoed through the haze, reminding everyone that uncertainty can be met with joy rather than dread. As the novice and the elder walked deeper into the mist, the boy noticed something strange. His anxiety, once sharp, began to dissolve into the fog itself. The edges of his fear blurred, softened, became less distinct. He realized that not knowing the entire path could be a gift. It freed him from the weight of endless predictions. He needed only this step, this breath, this circle of light. They reached the far gate of the monastery, the lantern's glow reflecting faintly on the damp wood. The master turned to the boy and said, "Your anxiety is fog. It obscures, yes, but it cannot harm, and within you burns a lantern that will always be enough." The novice bowed, his chest loosening with relief. In modern life, the fog appears as uncertainty about the future. What will happen at work, in relationships, in health? We long to see the whole road, but only the next step is ever revealed. The lantern within us, our breath, our awareness, our compassion, is enough to guide us through. That night, back in his chamber, The novice closed his eyes and pictured the lantern's glow. Each breath became a step into mist. Each exhale carried trust. He fell asleep more quickly than ever, held by the quiet truth that even in fog, one step of light is enough. Section 12. The calligrapher's brush. Drawing each stroke slowly becomes a practice of patience that transforms tension. The morning after walking through the fog with the lantern, the novice felt lighter, yet his restlessness had not fully dissolved. As he prepared ink and paper in the scriptorium, his hand trembled slightly. Anxiety returned in small waves. What if I smear the characters? What if my strokes are clumsy? What if others see my failure written plainly on the page? The elder monk, noticing his unease, guided him toward a low wooden table. On it rested a brush, smooth paper, and a small stone dish filled with ink dark as night. "Tonight," the master said, "you will not fight your thoughts. You will write them with the brush." He placed the brush in the novice's hand, steadying it gently. "Each stroke will be your breath, each line your heartbeat. Let the brush teach you." The boy dipped the brush into ink and began. His first stroke quivered, uneven and uncertain. He frowned, but the master whispered, "Even this is beautiful." Anxiety trembles, yet the paper still holds. Encouraged, the boy tried again. Slowly the brush moved more smoothly, his breath sinking with each stroke. He realized that the act of drawing was not about perfection, but about presence. This was the teaching of patience and concentration. Just as calligraphy requires deliberate attention, so too does calming the mind. When we slow down and give full presence to each moment, anxiety loosens its grip. A Zen master might ask, "Is the stroke imperfect, or is it simply alive with your presence?" As the novice continued, he found his thoughts easing. The ink spread across the page, flowing with his exhale. His shoulders lowered. He noticed how each character carried its own life, how even the uneven lines had grace. For once, he did not judge them as mistakes, but as expressions of the moment. Tonight, you can imagine this practice yourself. Visualize holding a brush in your hand. As you inhale, picture lifting the brush. As you exhale, imagine drawing a slow flowing line across a page. Repeat with 3 breaths, each exhale another line. Whether shaky or smooth, each stroke is complete in itself. This is your micro practice, painting your breath onto the canvas of stillness. The quirky side of Zen often came alive in calligraphy. Some monks would dip their brushes into water instead of ink, writing words that vanished almost instantly as the paper dried. They laughed, saying, "See, even teachings disappear, but the act of writing remains." Others drew only circles, known as enso, declaring them perfect no matter how lopsided. To them, the circle represented emptiness, wholeness, and the acceptance of imperfection. The novice, too, began to find joy in imperfection. One evening he wrote the character for heart, but his brush slipped and the lines wavered. Instead of crumpling the page, he looked closer and saw beauty in the trembling. "This," he whispered, "is my heart tonight, unsteady, but still whole." The master, seeing this insight, nodded with quiet approval. Over time, the boy's anxiety lessened each time he sat with the brush. He realized that the act of slowing down, of letting each stroke follow the breath, was enough to calm the racing within him. His calligraphy was not judged by others, nor was it displayed in the temple hall. It was simply practice, a dialogue between ink, paper, and spirit. In modern life, calligraphy may not be common, yet the lesson remains. You can write your worries on paper slowly and mindfully, not to solve them, but to see them clearly. You can doodle, sketch, or even imagine the brush in your hand. The act itself is medicine, for it slows the racing mind into the steady rhythm of breath. That night, as the novice placed his brush aside, he felt a softness in his chest. His anxiety had not vanished, but it had transformed into lines of ink, visible, tangible, less threatening. He lay on his mat, remembering the brush, and soon his breath became strokes on the canvas of sleep. The calligrapher's brush had taught him patience. It had shown him that trembling is not failure, that each line shaky or strong is a complete expression of the present moment. And as the night deepened, the novice rested, knowing that even his restless heart could draw beauty across the page of stillness. Section 13. The Old Master's Smile. A teacher responds to fear with kindness, turning sharp worry into gentle laughter. The novice's brushwork had grown steadier, and with it his breath. Yet even as his hand learned patience, his heart still trembled on certain nights. He would lie awake, imagining mistakes not yet made, weaving stories of failure that left his chest heavy. One evening, seeing his troubled eyes during supper, the elder master smiled warmly and said, "Come, tonight you shall learn from my smile." They stepped out into the courtyard, where lanterns glowed softly along the walls. The moon rose slowly, its pale light spilling across the sand and stone. The boy waited, expecting another long meditation or a parable, but the master simply stood there, his lips curved into a gentle smile. The silence stretched, and at first the novice felt awkward. His mind whispered, "Why does he not speak? What if I am disappointing him?" Yet every time the boy glanced up, the master's face radiated kindness, unwavering and calm. Finally, the master chuckled softly. "Anxiety is like a serious judge, always frowning, always condemning. But kindness is like a smile. It softens even the harshest verdict. When you smile at your own restless heart, it too begins to soften." This was the teaching of metta, or loving kindness. Just as we offer gentle care to friends, we can turn that same compassion inward, toward our own anxiety. A Zen master might ask, when you smile at your fear, is it you comforting the fear, or the fear comforting you? The novice tried it hesitantly, letting his lips curl upward. It felt strange at first, like pretending. But then he noticed something subtle. His breath deepened, his shoulders eased, and a warmth spread through him. The master's eyes glimmered. "See, even the smallest smile carries medicine. Tonight, you can try this medicine yourself. Rest your head gently, close your eyes, and let the corners of your mouth turn upward, just a little. As you inhale, imagine your smile reaching your chest. As you exhale, let it soften the anxious places inside. Try 3 such breaths, each with a soft smile. This is your micro-practice, smiling not because all is well, but because kindness itself brings calm. The quirky nature of Zen often revealed itself through laughter. One monk, when asked how to face fear, burst into loud chuckles, slapping his knee. "Fear tried to frighten me," he said, "but it tripped over its own robes." Others would playfully bow to each other with exaggerated grins, declaring, "Here is the face of enlightenment." Their joy reminded all that lightness could dissolve even the heaviest worry. The novice began to notice the power of small smiles throughout his days. When he spilled a bucket of water, instead of scowling at himself, he smiled faintly and whispered, "It is only water returning to the earth." When he forgot a line in chanting, he smiled softly, bowed, and continued, realizing that the world had not collapsed. The smile became his shield and his balm. One evening, a fellow novice confessed his own sleepless worry. The boy, remembering the master's teaching, simply smiled at him, warm, without judgment. The other novice's eyes filled with tears. "I feel lighter," he whispered. In that moment, the boy realized that the master's smile was not only for him, it was a gift he could also pass on. In modern life, smiles are often rushed, posed for photographs, or hidden behind masks of seriousness. Yet the quiet smile, the one you offer yourself in the dark, carries profound healing. It tells your restless mind, you are safe. You are enough. You are seen with kindness. That night, lying on his mat, the novice practiced the smile once more. His lips curved softly, his breath deepened, and the weight in his chest eased. He fell asleep with the master's gentle laughter echoing in his heart, carrying him into dreams where even his worries wore kind, smiling faces. The master's smile had become his own, a lantern shining within. And so the novice learned that compassion could transform anxiety not with force, but with something as simple, as tender as a smile in the night. Section 14. The Island Within. A quiet metaphor of refuge, teaching that stillness is always present inside. The novice had tasted the medicine of a smile, and it softened many restless edges within him. Still, there were nights when he longed for a refuge deeper than fleeting comfort. One evening, as storm clouds gathered in the valley, and distant thunder rumbled across the hills, the elder master called him to the meditation hall. The lamps were dim, the wooden floor cool beneath their feet, and the master pointed to a cushion in the center. "Sit," the master said, "and close your eyes. Tonight you will find the island within." The boy obeyed, though unease prickled across his skin. Outside, wind pressed against the shutters, rain tapping its first drops against the roof. He closed his eyes and felt the storm stir both in the sky and in his chest. The master's voice flowed gently, steady as a calm tide. When storms rise, do not chase them. Do not fear them. Search instead for the island within the still ground. No storm can wash away. The novice listened, letting the words settle. He breathed in, slow and full, then breathed out, long and steady. He pictured himself in a small boat tossed by waves. Lightning cracked, rain poured, winds howled. Fear rose in him, but then he remembered the master's words. He imagined steering toward an island, its shore solid, its trees rooted deep. When he placed his feet on that island in his mind, the storm still raged around, but he no longer felt swept away. This was the teaching of refuge, a practice woven through Buddhism, the awareness that within us is a ground of stability untouched by passing storms. A Zen master might ask, do you find the island, or does the island find you when you stop struggling? The boy continued breathing, each exhale planting him more firmly on this inner ground. He realized that his anxious thoughts were the storm loud, blinding, fierce. Yet his awareness was the island, steady, patient, waiting. For the first time, he sensed that he could rest there any time. Tonight, you can touch this island too. As you rest, close your eyes and imagine yourself standing on solid ground. Around you, waves may crash, winds may howl, but with each inhale, feel your feet rooted. With each exhale, whisper inwardly, I am safe here. Repeat this for 3 breaths. This is your micro practice, finding refuge in the still island of your own being. The quirky nature of Zen sometimes turns storms into teachers. One monk, during a fierce downpour, placed buckets on his head and arms, dancing in the rain, declaring, I am both storm and shelter. Others sat calmly under leaking roofs, smiling as water dripped onto their shoulders, saying, This drop is my bell of mindfulness. Their humor reminded everyone that storms, too, could be embraced. The novice, after his meditation, opened his eyes and saw that the rain outside had grown heavy. Yet he felt no dread. The storm was loud, yes, but the island within him was steady. He bowed to the master and whispered, Even when thunder shakes the valley, I know where I can rest. The master returned his bow with a serene smile. In modern life, storms take many forms: the sudden fear of change, the anxiety of uncertain news, the flood of information pouring endlessly into our minds. Yet within each of us lies that same island awareness, breath, presence. To return there is to remember that no storm lasts forever, and no storm can uproot the ground within. That night, the boy lay on his mat, thunder echoing through the mountains. But instead of shrinking from it, he let the sound remind him of his island. He felt rooted, solid, unshaken. Sleep came more easily, carrying him to dreams where even the fiercest storms bowed before the still ground of his heart. The island within had revealed itself, and the novice knew he could return to it again and again whenever anxiety rose. It was not a place to escape, but a truth already alive inside him: stillness, steady as the earth, waiting beneath every passing storm. Section 15. The Great Bell at Dawn. Compassion's resonance dissolves lingering anxiety into peace as night yields to morning. The storm that had swept through the valley faded by morning. Clouds lifted like curtains being drawn aside, and sunlight spilled once more across the hillsides. The temple bell, washed clean by rain, gleamed bronze against the blue sky. Its form was still, yet all who looked at it felt a resonance in their hearts. The novice, now many weeks into his training, had walked through bamboo groves, sat before mirrors, crossed bridges, spoken to ghosts, raked sand, and carried lanterns through fog. He had trembled, he had smiled, he had discovered the island within. Yet one final lesson awaited him. That evening, as dusk painted the valley in shades of violet, the elder monk led the boy to the bell tower. The air smelled of wet stone and pine. Crickets had begun their song, steady and unhurried. The master placed a hand on the bell's wooden frame and said, "You have faced your restless mind. You have learned to bend like bamboo, to release like the river, to trust the lantern, to smile at your fear, and to rest on the island within. Tonight you shall learn how the sound of compassion carries farther than fear." The novice bowed, his heart steady though a ripple of anticipation stirred within him. The master did not strike the bell immediately. Instead, he asked, "Tell me, what is anxiety?" The boy thought for a moment, then answered, "It is a storm that forgets it will pass." The master's smile deepened. "And what is stillness?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, It is the ground that remains, even when the storm shouts. The master nodded, lifting the mallet. With a slow, deliberate motion, he struck the bell. The sound that followed was deep, round, endless. It rolled outward through the valley, filling the air, filling the novice's chest, filling even the spaces between thoughts. The boy felt tears prick his eyes. For the first time he realized that stillness was not silent. It sang. It sang in a way that calmed every restless corner of him. "This is the echo of compassion," the master said softly. "It transforms anxiety not by silencing it, but by resonating with it until it dissolves into harmony. Just as the bell does not fight the air, compassion does not fight fear. It embraces it, and in that embrace, fear changes." The boy closed his eyes and let the resonance carry through him. He noticed how his anxious thoughts rose, but instead of clashing, they softened, absorbed into the sound. He breathed with the vibration, feeling it flow down to his feet, up to his crown, radiating through his whole being. Tonight, you can join him in this practice. As you inhale, imagine the bell's notes swelling gently in your chest. As you exhale, picture that sound flowing outward, carrying your tension with it. Do this for 3 breaths, letting each exhale spread like a wave of compassion. This is your micro-practice, resonating with anxiety, until it softens into stillness. The quirky humor of Zen often revolved around the bell. One monk, after a strike, declared, "The bell rang yesterday, and I am still listening." Another said, "I did not strike the bell struck me." Their laughter echoed across the temple, reminding all that resonance is not bound by time or by self. As the last note of the bell faded, the valley returned to quiet. Yet within the boy, the sound remained, steady as breath. He bowed deeply to the master. "I understand now," he whispered. "Anxiety is loud, but compassion rings deeper. The way out is in modern life, bells may not fill our valleys, but we can find echoes in other ways. The hum of a fan at night, the rhythm of a favorite song, the steady beat of our own heart. All can become bells of mindfulness, reminding us that stillness is always near." The novice returned to his chamber that night with a calm that felt different from before. It was not the fragile calm of temporary relief, but the steady calm of resonance carried deep inside. He lay on his mat, breathing slowly, each exhale like the fading note of the bell. His thoughts still came, but they no longer frightened him. They were simply vibrations, dissolving into a larger harmony. The bell at dawn would ring again, but even before it did, the novice had already found the sound within. Anxiety had not vanished, but it had transformed no longer a storm, but a note in the song of compassion, and as the stars drifted overhead, he surrendered to sleep, carried by the resonance of stillness that would remain long after the bell itself had quieted. Now, as you rest in your own quiet space, imagine the temple fading into mist, the lanterns dimming one by one. The night air is cool, the storm long past, and only the gentle rhythm of your breath remains. Inhale softly, exhale more slowly. With each breath, feel your body sink deeper, as though the earth itself is holding you with infinite patience. Picture the great bell, bronze and still, resting in the courtyard. No one lifts the mallet now, yet you can feel its presence. In silence, it hums, a resonance too subtle for ears but clear to the heart. That resonance is within you too, the steady pulse of compassion, the quiet ground of being that has always been here. Your anxious thoughts may still appear, like small boats drifting across a wide river. Let them come. Let them pass. Notice how the water carries them away effortlessly. You do not need to chase them, nor to fight them. You only need to rest on the island within, solid and unmoving, while the waves of the world flow past. Each exhale is a release. Each inhale is a return. Let the edges of your minds soften now, like fog dissolving under morning sun. There is nothing to hold, nothing to resist. The sound of stillness, the echo of compassion, surrounds you. Sleep waits gently, like a lantern glowing just ahead on the path. You need not hurry toward it. You are already walking there, step by step, with every breath. Peace is here, and it has always been. Allow yourself to drift now, carried by the resonance that never fades.